Well, today in our Wonderful Day in the Lord podcast, we're looking at 1 Samuel chapter 13 and continuing to look at the early lives of Saul. We would mention that in verse 1, we have some numbers here that we're not sure about. It says that Saul was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 42 years over Israel. If you look at your English text, you'll find that the word 30 and the word 40 are both in italics, meaning that we're not sure if they were there. They're not in the best manuscripts, and the numbers are hard to reconcile. We do know in Acts 13:21 that we're told there that Saul reigned for 40 years, so that's pretty close. Whether he was 30 years old when he began to reign or older or whatever, we don't know. We do know that his son would be during this period was a mighty warrior, and so he had to be a grown man. So it would seem that Saul had to be older when he became king, or that this is down the road several years from the time that he became king. Nevertheless, the Philistines are upon them in a sense. They are always a battle here with the Philistines for Saul. And the people of Israel were fleeing. They were afraid of the Philistines. Matter of fact, in verse 6, they're hiding themselves in caves and holes in the ground wherever they can. Saul himself was at Gilgal, and the people following him trembled. Now, he had a small group of people following him, but a lot of them had fled away, and some, we'll find out later on, had probably even defected to the Philistines. So things weren't going well for him. But Saul had been told by Samuel in verse 8 to wait until Samuel came, and he would do a burnt offering and so forth before the battle. But the people in verse 8 were scattering from Saul. Samuel didn't come when he was supposed to come, and so he gave up and decided that he would offer the offering himself. Now, this was a mistake because Saul was not a priest, and Saul was not a prophet. Saul was a king, and the kings were not to be doing this. But he takes it upon himself to do so. But as soon as he had done so, verse 11, Samuel shows up, says, "What have you done?" And he began to kind of ream him out on that. Well, Saul, as he often does, kind of made up a story. He says in verse 12, "I forced myself and offered the burnt offering." Well, made myself do it, he said. But Samuel wasn't playing that game. He said, "You've acted foolishly. You have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God." And therefore, he says, the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever, but now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought for himself a man after his own heart. The Lord has appointed him as a ruler over his people because you've not kept what the Lord commanded you. So Saul is in the first stage of losing his kingdom. The Lord said, "I would have set up a dynasty for you, but not now, because you're not obeying me. You're not doing what I told you to do. So I'm going to search for a man after my own heart." This is the first time this shows up. We know it's going to be David. We also find this quoted in Acts chapter 13, verse 22. And when it says a man after his own heart, what this basically means is a man who's in alignment with God, a man who's loyal to God. It sounds more poetic to be a man after his own heart, but basically we're speaking of loyalty here. And you'll see that in a number of translations if you take the time to look at them. Later on in chapter 15, verses 23 and 28, we see that Saul goes further in his disobedience to God. As a result of that, he is going to lose the dynasty, not immediately. He would go many years still as the king, but his kingdom would not transfer over to his own children later on. Most of his children died in battle anyway, but he did not. He lost that at this point. It gets worse later on. When we go on down to the rest of the story, we find the terrible position, the plight that the Israelites were in. It says in verse 19, "No blacksmith could be found in all the land of Israel." So the Philistines had made sure that the Jews did not have the weaponry to challenge them in battle. And so they didn't have swords, they didn't have spears. And so all they could do here in verse 20 was go down and sharpen their plowshares and so forth, their axes, their hoes, their farm implements. And so that's what they did. There was, verse 22, at this point, there was neither sword nor spear found in the hands of any of the people except what Saul and his son Jonathan had. So they're not ready for battle. They are fearful. Things aren't going well, and yet the battle needs to take place. So we'll see what happens tomorrow in chapter 14.